Also, I just love the fact that it looks like he's sizing up some booty, and so I'm gonna back it up for Mr. Trump there. Good morning, mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, mothers, misters, and to all my cousins out there around the world. It's time to plug in. Let's get the train chugging. And for the first time, Trump has said that he will go. He will leave the White House if the Electoral College votes for Biden. Now, that's because, while technically the votes have been committed to Biden, they've not all been certified, and I believe it's on the 14th of December that it all becomes official. Also, I just love the fact that it looks like he's sizing up some booty, and so I'm going to back it up for Mr. Trump there. Yeah, we've got, I just realized I still got a little bit of my browser on the side of the screen. Sorry about that. But yeah, and he's saying, ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, never mind. He says he'll finally leave. We'll cut that all out of YouTube. But for the first time, he says he will actually leave the House, the White House, if the Electoral College votes for Biden. Let's learn more in the caption below. The U.S. president also made it clear that he is not prepared to concede. He's not going to actually admit defeat as he continues to push his baseless conspiracies that his second term is being stolen. By whom? Oh, by everybody. By the fake news and by the libs and the Dems and the evil people everywhere that are just trying to destroy him. Notice he's, well, as always, just focused on himself. Either way, many appearances on the show, baseless claims, baseless conspiracies. It has no foundation upon which to stand. It has no base. That base being evidence, proof, whatever. It's baseless. It's groundless. There's no real, nothing solid there. It's just a bunch of hot air being spewed forth through the mouth of Rudy Giuliani and the Orange Monster. And it's being stolen, yes, a beautiful present continuous passive, and we don't need to say by whom because you know who's doing it. All right, moving on. Apparently Trump flipped out on a reporter and he says, "I'm the president of the United States. Young man, you never talk like that to the president of the United States." Much like some sort of father chastising his impudent son who disrespected his mother. However, it's just more ridiculous. "I'm the president. You don't talk to the president like that." He flipped out on a reporter. To flip out on somebody, or to flip out in general, similar to freak out in a way. However, it's to become very excited or agitated, usually in a state of anger. And you lose control, and then maybe you whoosh, lash out at them verbally and give them a strong rebuke, criticism. Moving on. Wow, some old vocabulary just bubbling up this morning. Trump's rhetoric over the election hampers the recovery as Americans face heightened economic health fears. If you're hampering something, synonym for that is hindering something. And what is to hamper and to hinder? Often we put them together just for emphatic purposes, but to hamper and to hinder means to put up obstacles that will make progress more difficult for somebody. And so, yeah, you're holding them back. You're making progress more difficult by, yes, setting up obstacles, creating other artificial setbacks. And so it's just nice to hamper and to hinder, some great H verbs for slowing down someone else's progress intentionally, usually. All right. Oh, and then heightened, sorry, much like we've got lengthened and strengthened. I love so many adjectives where you put an en at the end, meaning to make that adjective. Well, there's a few nouns like that as well, especially lengthened, strengthened, and heightened. And height, how tall you are, 193, or 6'3.5". Well, probably not a half anymore. In my old age, I am most likely shrinking. I'm gonna have to change the elevation of this camera soon. But yes, they're making it higher. If something is heightened, your heightened senses when the adrenaline is pumping through your veins, or heightened economic and health fears. Things have gotten higher because, well, the wave is getting worse and people are traveling all over the place and businesses are closing and everyone's still suffering because of this COVID calamity. Moving on. A CNN host lambasts Marco Rubio for his attack on Biden's cabinet picks. Ooh, to lambast. That's not one that you see every day. On the news here, we get so often to rip, to slam, to tear, and other words for very vocal criticisms. To lambast, I do believe, is making its first appearance here on the show after 9 months. And that just does mean to criticize someone very, very vocally and in a public fashion. You break it down to like Old English or Middle English, and from lamb and bast, and that means to hit hard and to thrash. So it's almost like redundant for emphatic purposes. It has nothing to do with lambs, and so your little sheep, Pamuk, has nothing to do with this. No lambs involved here. Two totally different things. The bee belongs to the bast, and the lamb belongs to hitting hard in Middle English. All right, yes. He criticized Biden's cabinet picks for their expertise, their education, and their experience, and so she basically tore him to pieces. Good morning, Zdenek. Good morning. I do believe my wife is out there somewhere. If not, she's down the hall listening, because, well, you can hear my voice everywhere. Moving on. A Hong Kong protester is getting 21 months in prison for throwing eggs. As the judiciary, that's the legal system, the judges, the judiciary branch of the government takes a hard line. And that means it's going to be a very clearly delineated line. There's no gray area. It's black and it's white. And across that line, thou shalt not cross, or you're going to prison, son. And so, yes, throwing eggs, as innocent as it may seem, that's landing him in prison for nearly 2 years. That's awful. To take a hard line against something, against protesters, against corruption, not in this case, but in other examples you see of taking a hard line against, cheating, against, I don't know. That calls, whenever I run out of steam and run out of examples, it's time to recharge the caffeine. So, and I saw another headline about a protester in Singapore, and he's going to prison apparently for standing on the side of the road holding a cardboard sign with a smiley face. This is a little bit worse, but that's a little bit, I don't know. Either way, I'd rather go to a Singaporean jail than a Chinese jail, but that's just me. I don't think either of them are a cakewalk. All right, moving on. A potential setback to the AstraZeneca vaccine. Yes, a setback is something that delays the achievement of your goal. Imagine your goal's over there and you're making progress, dun, 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 and then something picks you up and sets you back. And so then once again, you are further from achieving your goal. Now, it might not wipe out or erase progress that you've already made. It is possible that it makes the actual goal itself further away. In this case, they made some mistakes recording the dosage of the vaccine, and so it might not be all as effective as they originally had said. Unlawful assembly. How does one guy get it? Because, I mean, in the actual definition of the term, to assemble means to put together, much like you assemble a Lego set or something. If it's one person, what is he assembling? Unless he's reassembling himself like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. I don't know. Either way, setbacks are those little roadblocks and things that delay you from achieving your goal. Yes, you could say that it is related to... Where was it? Yes, these setbacks, like having to be stored at minus 70 degrees, hampers and hinders the distribution of the vaccine. Also, making mistakes with the experiments and the tests and the trials is a setback and will hamper or hinder the distribution or the willingness to distribute the vaccine. All right, moving on, folks. The intensive care nurse's take on how it started meme goes viral. I have no idea. I understand all the words, but I know nothing about the story. But somebody's take on something, it just means that that is their opinion about it, how they understand it, how they view it. And so this ICU nurse is sharing his or her opinion or view on some meme. Ta-da! Oh, okay. There's 3 of them now, and I'm just a human male, and so I can't keep track of three things at the same time. So yes, maybe the Pfizer vaccine was the -70, but the AstraZeneca, it was something to do with mistaken dosages, and so it's not. Well, the numbers aren't exactly what they had thought it had, are not what they thought it was. Juggling past tenses. Yeah, I don't know. What's your take on that? Moving on. In either way, it doesn't instill confidence in the populace when the vaccine creators like, oh, yeah, we didn't measure it right, or we wrote it down wrong. Especially when they're testing like injecting DNA into your body. Yeah, I kind of want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row and you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, to borrow a few more idiomatic expressions for doing things properly. All right. A model has quit the runway, and this is not somebody walking on the airport where planes take off and land. No, the runway is the other long, thin, narrow thing where models go, and then they do their little twirl, and they walk back after giving their blue steel, or La Tigre. And this model is citing pressure to compromise his or her religious beliefs. Yes, the catwalk. Meow. To cite something means to give a reason or evidence for it, much like if you have there's a little number up here in the superscript and then some information down below. Those are citations, yes, where we're quoting some other source of information. And so, they're giving a reason for their reason, or giving evidence for their reason, and that's compromising their religious beliefs. Don't know anything about it, whatever, let's move on. Biden is to face a test over access to sensitive info as he inherits Trump's super secret server. Ooh. Yes, Trump was on his way out, and although he's not passing away or dying, having vacating the office, then the things that had been his will be handed down to the next president. And so, yes, while there's no death involved, inheriting as something is passed down through successive generations or successive iterations of the presidency. To inherit something from typically your parents or grandparents. Maybe you inherited the farm or that lovely rug or a lamp or some other family heirloom. Ooh, there we go. What's that, Nadim? A 23-year-old Muslim woman wears a hijab and complained there were not enough Muslim stylists. Yeah, okay. There's a can of worms that I'm not willing to walk down right now when I got plenty of other stuff going on, but wow. All right. I'm not touching that, man. I'm going Teflon. It's going to slide right off me. Ethiopia enters the final phase of operations in Tigray after a 72-hour surrender deadline ends. That's right, they gave the separatist rebel guys a deadline to surrender, to lay down their arms, to put down their weapons and say, you know what, never mind. Of course, that didn't really happen. That deadline expired, so after 72 hours, they are going to take action against them, and already have begun taking action against them. Hopefully, this finds some sort of reasonable resolution, because Ethiopia is an anchor of stability in an unstable area, and hopefully they can get back to business without too much loss of life or destruction or anything like that. Yeah. Best of luck to all of them, as always. Moving on. The leader of an online sex ring that blackmailed victims into sex slavery has been sentenced to 40 years in prison. Nice present perfect passive. By whom? By the judge. He or she was found guilty by the jury, but the judge is the one who gives the sentencing, and the judge said 40 years sounds appropriate for blackmailing people into sex slavery. Don't know anything about that. It sounds interesting, but also tragic. But either way, to blackmail somebody in the modern day iteration, usually you have some sort of information about them, And then in exchange for money or other personal favors, you promise not to release that information to the public. And so how that's working, to get some information about some people, and so that they don't go public with the information, they turn them into sex slaves, at least as I understand it. Other way, the verb to blackmail originally came from the Scottish border regions of England, where people would basically pay off the Scot tribe leaders not to attack them. They're essentially paying protection money, and by protection money, we mean to protect themselves from the very people they were paying. Classic. Yeah, that's where it originated. Paying off my ancient peoples. Moving on. Disney is laying off 32,000 employees, as we know from the show countless times in this COVID catastrophe. Companies are suffering, and as a result, due to economic hard times, they're having to take their employees and just lay them off to the side and say, you haven't done anything wrong, but I'm going to need, you can't be over here. I need you to be over there, and we're not going to pay you anymore. But if things turn around and start to rebound and improve, then you can come back and work for us again. How's that sound? And so basically, it's firing people for economic reasons, with the option to return if things improve. Ta-da! Moving on. Indigenous people are fighting to reclaim what was stolen from them, and it's simple, but it's been a centuries-long battle. That's a mouthful, it's a long headline. Let's just stick with the pink highlighted words. Indigenous, belonging to a very particular place. Ta-da! Like the Native Americans of North America, or the Aborigines of Australia, the Maoris of New Zealand, etc. They were the people who were there and belonged to that place. They were not brought in or imported. Alright, and so these indigenous people, in this case I do believe they're talking about the North American Native Americans, and they're fighting to reclaim their land. It's a simple claim, but it has been a centuries-long battle to regain what had been theirs originally. Now, the point being here, centuries are hundreds of years. A century, 100, coming from Latin, cent, meaning 100. But with the hyphen long here, we can just add that hour-long, day-long, week-long to any, can tag that onto the end of basically any period of time to create an adjective meaning that long. Just like earlier in the week, or maybe even last week, we had something statewide, nationwide. You can also do that then for physical or geographical areas, much like that you can do the long with time. So wide for space, long for time. Ta-da! Moving on. Claire, the Scottish Deerhound, wins the National Dog Show. I don't know what a deerhound is, but I'm happy for Claire. Well done, dog. French police officers have been suspended. Nice present perfect passive reduced by whom? By the boss. After a video has emerged of them beating a black man, as all too often we see in the news. People of color being abused by people in authority whose job is to serve and protect. However, to emerge means to come into view, usually up out of water, or it could be out of darkness. Darkness meaning nobody knew about it, and then into the light meaning now people can see it, know it, understand it, and be upset about it. But yes, the submarine emerged from the water, or the monster emerged from the swamp. The criminal emerged from the shadows where he had been previously lurking. To overcomplicate that a little bit. Moving on. Utah officials are thrilled, they're super duper excited, man, to see animals using a highway wildlife overpass. Wildlife are those lives in the wild. Animals. Yes, not dogs and cats, not domestic animals, but the wild animals. Wildlife, squirrels and deers and bears and stuff like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! And they built an overpass. You see this quite a bit in Czech Republic. You see it in Spain. You see it in many different countries. It's becoming more and more popular because highways disrupt habitats and separate populations, thus contributing to less genetic diversity of native species. And so they're building these like grassy bridges that go over. It's a bridge not for other cars, not for people, but for the animals to get over highways so populations can continue to intermingle and, I don't know, migrate for food sources seasonally, etc. And yes, it is a little bridge which allows you to pass over the highway or other man-made barrier. An overpass. They also have underpasses. Ta-da! See, English is logical, guys. Sometimes. Moving on. On to some more local news for you guys. Unfortunately, hundreds have been sentenced to life in prison in Turkey's attempted coup trial. Multiple years down the road now, they're finally getting around to it. Countless other people have already been placed in prison and or lost their jobs and livelihood as a result of this coup attempt or supposed coup attempt. However, some of the trial is finally concluded for hundreds more, and they have been sentenced, present perfect passive, reduced by judges to life in prison, and that does not sound appealing to anybody serving life prison sentences. Best of luck out there, no matter where you may be, unless you actually really deserve it, and then I hope you fester and rot in prison. Sorry. Moving on. This is interesting. Norway ice melt. Well, due to climate change, polar ice caps and other ice is melting and receding, but in the wake of the receding glaciers, recycled vocabulary, we're making other interesting discoveries. And the disappearing ice revealed a frozen archive of ancient reindeer hunting arrows, where people might have walked right past it before and didn't see it because it was covered in ice. And then one day somebody said, "Oh, hey, look at that." And it was a bunch of arrows for hunting reindeer, and they're something like 6,000 years old. I mean, that's mind-bending, mind-blowing. What? Yeah, and like really, I saw a picture, like really perfectly straight, fine shafts of the arrows. Well done, Neolithic, just after the Ice Age hunter guys. Bravo. Caps off to you. Rest in peace. There was something else with that. But to reveal, to show to the public for the first time, or for the first time in a long time, in that case, 6,000 years. Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Some guy was walking around in Jeseniki in the Czech Republic in the mountains up near the eastern Polish border or whatever, and he saw some piece of metal and he kicked it, and it was a sword that was like a bronze sword that was like 3,000 years old or something. And so yeah, lots of people are coming across ancient objects, and that's interesting because it helps us piece together bits, parts of our past and understand those who came before us a little bit better. All right, moving on. Alex Trebek, in a posthumous message, Trebek says to be thankful and keep the faith. One of my personal heroes and the longtime host of my favorite television trivia show, Jeopardy! May Alex Trebek, the best Canadian ever, perhaps, rest in peace. But posthumous message, apparently he recorded it, and now he's dead, and now it's being made to the public. Post meaning after, and humus coming from humus, which means soil or dirt, ground. Yeah, and so after being put in the ground, that's where posthumous comes from. And so, moving on. Yes, because it's about knowing things instead of just luck and or whatever. It's just such an iconic show. I adore it. I love it, love it, love it. All right, here's the type and amount of exercise that you need. Who advises? Sorry, that's always my joke. The World Health Organization advises. This is a verb, to advise. That's the third person singular, because it advises. Notice that pronunciation, both of those S's are pronounced as Z's or Z's, depending on what flavor of English you prefer. As a noun, it's advice, I-C-E, and that advice is uncountable. You can't give somebody advices. No, it does not work. It's just I can give you some advice or a piece of advice, a bit of advice, but as a verb, advises. All right. Hmm. Oh my. Uh-huh. All right. Got a little distracted by Nedim's chorus of messages here, but yes, they're advising you how much exercise and what kinds you need. Is it going to be aerobic, anaerobic? Moving on. Britain's final Brexit choice could prolong the worst recession in 300 years. A recession is a period of decreased economic activity in which trade drops and unemployment typically rises. I forget the exact definition, but yes, coming from the verb to recede, meaning to pull back or become smaller, much like when the tide is going out. The tide is receding, or hairlines begin to recede and become pulling back, moving away. And so an economic recession is when the economy is going down. It's not a full-on depression. And to prolong means to make longer. Yes? However, you wouldn't say I'm going to prolong my holiday. You'd say I'm going to extend my holiday. With prolong, it's usually something negative. Recessions are not good. To prolong the illness, to prolong the pain, agony, and suffering, etc. And so that's just a little one that I hear people misuse quite frequently. Yes, we understand what you mean. However, it is one of those things that kind of irks us a little bit from time to time. And so commit it to memory. Prolong bad things. Extend the good ones. Yeah. Okay. Learn it, know it, love it, live it. Moving on. Whole Foods sent some customers a disconcerting email about their turkey. Disconcerting means that it upsets you, causes worry or concern. Yes? And so maybe it said, your turkey isn't a turkey. Your turkey is made of mud. I don't know. Either way, the email that some customers got about their turkey caused them to be worried. Maybe about the safety or their health. I don't know. Let's move on. Women in Japan have had period leave for over 70 years. Yes, they are able to take leave of absence from work when they are having their period or their time of the month, their menstrual cycle, whatever you want to call it, and that is absolutely good and fine because some women suffer from debilitating health effects as a result of that monthly for the majority of their life. And that's nice. Japan, despite being fairly sexist and discriminatory against women, they've apparently allowed that for over 70 years, and why the West doesn't have it, I don't know. Wow, you're just like trolly today, buddy. Turkey is people, says Charlton Heston. Yeah, alright. Those damned apes. Alright, moving on. Rune stones open a gateway to ancient Viking civilization. No, it's not an actual portal through which you can travel back in time. It's a figurative gateway for us to understand the Viking civilization through the runes, the magical symbols that they carve in, you guessed it, stones. They probably carved it into wood and trees and other things as well. However, those, as we know, biodegrade over time, whereas stones withstand the test of time better than simple organic matter. They don't decompose. They can erode, but they don't disappear. All right, moving on. He fell lower, more dangerously and darker. The enigma of Diego Maradona. And rest in peace to one of football's all-time greatest, if not his all-time great, according to some. Suffered. He had some problems with his brain, and then I do believe he suffered from a heart attack and finally passed away. The enigma is a mystery, a puzzle. He was supremely talented, however, he was also tormented or a tortured genius, like so many geniuses are. Watch The Queen's Gambit, yeah? Yes, to be a genius, either in terms of a sport or an intellectual genius, often the flip side of that coin comes with some sort of mental anguish, some mental pain, if something torments you, it's annoying you, it's pestering you, it's bothering you, it's causing suffering. It's basically a synonym for torture. Yeah, and nobody likes torture of any sort, to my knowledge. But yes, and I'd love to go to Iceland too. Good Iceland. Moving on. Somebody got married on the same day that he starred in a cup game. I believe they're talking about sports in which they were competing for a trophy, which is the shape of a cup. However, maybe it was some other sort of cup game, like beer pong. I do not know. Either way, he starred in it, meaning that he was the star. Ta-da! Sorry. Moving on. The return of dogs to the White House feels magnificently American. Okay. But yes, I mean, having a dog in the White House, a dog, and it's so iconic, sort of 1950s meat and potatoes Americana. Come home to pat the dog, and you go out and get the paper and this and that. And well, there was no dog in the White House with Trump, but the Bidens have a couple, and so there'll be dogs in the White House. It feels wonderfully American. I guess nostalgia for old times. Yeah. Yeah. Why is that one of the larger headlines? I mean, and it was in one of the the culture sections or something. Yeah, that gets a big headline, and then Trump pardoning Flynn gets a smaller headline. That's something I don't understand. But either way, this is true, sad but true. We shouldn't be surprised that Trump pardoned Michael Flynn, just disgusted. Yes, we shouldn't be surprised that Trump said, you know what, even though you lied to the FBI, even though you told the FBI that you're guilty, you pled guilty at one point in time and were found guilty and sentenced to prison, that's okay. I pardon you. You are officially excused from your crimes, and you may leave prison despite having lied to the FBI. Yeah, however, yes, we shouldn't be surprised because he was lying to help Trump, and so, of course, Trump pardoned him. We shouldn't be surprised. However, it should never stop making our stomach flip-flop and disgusting us. Gives you goosebumps, makes your skin crawl, makes your tummy turn. All right, moving on. What Chuck Schumer doesn't get about Georgia, in this case, get, one of our favorite verbs, which we use for everything. What he doesn't understand about Georgia. Just like if I tell you the joke, 3 men walked into a bar and the 4th one ducked. Do you get it? In that case, get, once again, means understand. Common with jokes. What, don't you get it? Come on. Don't you get the joke? Moving on. Another emerge. A Democratic fight is emerging ahead of the appointment to fill Kamala Harris' Senate seat. Yes, it's coming. Ta-da! It's coming up. It has arisen into view as a result of, well, her moving into the vice presidency. And so, yes, it has emerged. It's coming to public light. Ta-da! Yes, pardon people, but not necessarily people that lie for them. And I disagree with presidential pardons. From what I understand, it's supposed to be for people who are maybe wrongly accused or wrongly imprisoned, not just forgiving the crimes of your cronies and the people who do your dirty work. Yeah, and maybe it is a tradition and so on, but does that make it right? Yeah, there was a tradition of slavery for a long time, and that wasn't right. So, yeah, I think the presidential pardon should go the way of the dinosaurs, personally, along with the Electoral College. Moving on. Trump's outcasts in civil and foreign service may get a second chance under Biden. That's right, like Alexander Vindman, who was pushed out of his job for informing or blowing the whistle during the Trump times. Quite a few civil and, foreign service, the people who work in embassies and so on, they became outcasts. They were cast out. They were thrown out of their positions, thrown out of the circles of power, and became then outcasts. well, they might get to come back under Biden because most of them didn't really do anything wrong other than upsetting the orange monster. Okay, well, fair enough. Not going to get into that right now. I'm starving, man, and I'm so close to the bottom. Moving on. Biden stakes out an anti-Trump presidency to stake out an area, literally putting like wooden stakes out there and like maybe tying a string between them and saying, this area is mine. That's in a physical sense. To stake your claim somewhere, like I'm going to mine gold right here, and so this is mine, and yep, I'm making a little fence around it, staking my claim. But in this case, it does mean just basically voicing an opinion and stating your objectives, your intentions for what you will do. And what he plans to do will go against what his predecessor had done, has done, is still doing. Yeah. Okie dokie. Yes, Starvin' Marvin is correct. All right, Amazon wins a legal fight against eBay over alleged seller poaching. So interesting. When we think about poaching, it's illegal hunting. Like if you're off in the forest, but the forest belongs to the king, and if you kill the deer and you take the deer, that's illegal because the deer are in the forest and therefore they belong to the king. And so off with your head. But in this case, it's just eBay was offering unfair or illegal, or at least unethical incentives to the sellers to switch platforms from Amazon to eBay. Much like in your department, Nihan, if one of your teammates started doing some closed doors, under the table, behind the scenes dealings to get one of your clients to switch their account to them, that would be poaching. Or you hear about IT companies, they'll just kind of, they'll offer some extra incentives to try and steal workers from one tech company over to their company. It's not always illegal, but in the root meaning of the word, it is. You also hear about wildlife poachers, people killing elephants and rhinos and other animals illegally to sell their body parts on the black market. Screw swans. I just want to ride one and use its head as like a joystick, but whatever. Apple's global security chief and 2 members of a sheriff's office have been indicted for alleged bribery. The Apple security guy gave like 200 iPads to a sheriff to do something, and so to pay, I forgot to highlight it, to pay money to get somebody to give you favor or outside of the law to win favor with. Man, my stomach is rumbling so loud, I'm surprised you can't hear it. But they have been officially charged with the crime. An indictment is issued by a grand jury, which is a group of people which are convened or assembled, brought together to listen to some of the claims to see if they deserve or merit official charges being filed against the individual, and then thus beginning the legal proceedings in court. And for paying under the table. And I'm gonna eat me some eggs. Probably not Benedict, but that's that. And so that brings us to the end of this morning's broadcast. To my mushrooms, my friends, my family, and my friends. I will be on 8 p.m. for the crossword. I'm probably going to come on a bit early, do some review of this language of the week, because it's been a doozy. Despite being only 3 days, we probably have another 120 words. Some are recurring, but we've got a couple newbies as well. And so I'll be engaging in some interesting activities in order to review and practice some of this terminology before the crossword. So I'm coming on early, but I'm keeping a fixed time crossword at 8 p.m. And so hopefully see you all there. And if not, you'll be square. Whatever. I don't know. I gotta go. I'm hungry. And so have a beautiful day and an even better weekend if I don't see you tonight. And I'll be back Monday morning, 8 a.m. with the news, as always. Much love. Bye-bye. Stay safe.